Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
The President of the United States.
And with that, we are off and running. President Joe Biden addressing the nation Thursday night at his annual State of the Union address. Fiery and definitely partisan, historic in that he mentions not Donald Trump, but his predecessor, by my count, at least 13 times. So we're going to spend first half of the show going over some key moments, not just in the speech, but how about the pre-speech confrontation with Georgia's very own Marjorie Taylor, Crazy Red Hat Lady Society Greene. Greene handing the president a button and imploring that he say her name. We'll get to that part of his speech where he actually did say her name. And then, of course, they criticize him because he pronounced it eloquently enough. In fact, I'm waiting for that moment where they're going to go from being outraged that he doesn't say her name to, oh my gosh, how dare he invoke her name in a speech for political purposes. Hello. Oh, and then there's this. The chance of 4 more years. Eric Erickson and conservative pundits on the X-Twitter platform taking exception to that because that's never happened before, except 4 years ago. And in 2012. Yeah. So, whatever. Anyway, let's dive on into the substance of the speech. He starts by contrasting Ronald Reagan versus Donald Trump.
In January 1941, Franklin Roosevelt came to this chamber to speak to the nation. And he said, I address you at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union. Hitler was on the march. War was raging in Europe. President Roosevelt's purpose was to wake up Congress and alert the American people that this was no ordinary time. Freedom and democracy were under assault in the world. Tonight, I come to this same chamber to address the nation. Now, it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. But Ukraine can stop Putin. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers at war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Now my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, do whatever the hell you want. That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable. In a literal sense. History is watching.
By the way, former George W. Bush White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer tweeting, "It's odd that Biden is beginning with Ukraine. He should have begun with something unifying that would have made D's and R's applaud for him. When defeating a Kremlin rat isn't something that unites D's and R's, there's something wrong with the R's."
History is watching, just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th. When insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you were here on that darkest of days. We all saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed. America stood. America stood strong, and democracy prevailed. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win.
Boom. Wow. Honestly, that's the line of the night. That's it right there.
As I've done ever since being elected to office, I ask all of you without regard to party to join together and defend democracy. Remember your oath of office of defending against all threats, foreign and domestic. Respect free and fair elections. Restore trust in our institutions. And make clear political violence has absolutely no place in America, zero place. Again, it's not hyperbole to suggest history is watching. We're watching. Your children and grandchildren will read about this day and what we do.
On to immigration. The president addresses that and actually answers to the heckles from crazy red hat lady Marjorie Taylor Greene and actually invokes Laken Riley's name. Again, he doesn't pronounce it precisely the way Republicans would have liked it, and I get it. But he also said President Lincoln earlier in the speech, and it sort of sounded the same as Laken too. So maybe that's more the issue, diction.
In November, my team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now. What are you against? 100 more high-tech drug detection machines to significantly increase the ability to screen and stop vehicles smuggling fentanyl into America. That's killing thousands of children. This bill would save lives and bring order to the border. It will also give me and any new president new emergency authority to temporarily shut down the border when the number of migrants at the border is overwhelming. The Border Patrol Union has endorsed this bill. The Federal Chamber of Commerce is, yeah. You're saying low. Look at the facts. I know you know how to read. I believe that given the opportunity for a majority in the House and Senate would endorse the bill as well, a majority right now. But unfortunately, politics has derailed this bill so far. I'm told my predecessor called members of Congress in the Senate to demand they block the bill. He feels a political win. He viewed it as a political win for me and a political loser for him. It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal.
And by the way, let me go on record here. I don't like that use. I don't like the use of that word at all. I never have. I call folks on the right out when they use that term. I will say the same to President Biden. That word is a slur. And a lot of progressive Democrats bristled at that. I'll share some of that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. The Huffington Post reporting that Biden's use of the word illegal to describe migrants raises red flags for some Democrats. They include Representative Dela Ramirez from Illinois on a social media post afterwards, Representative Chuy Garcia of Illinois as well, Representative Ilhan Omar, of course, of Minnesota, disapproved of the use of the term as well. And they are right to call him out for use of that term, in my opinion.
That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly. Folks, I would respectfully suggest my Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now.
And listen, a lot of us on the left are not wild about this bill, but it can't be said that Democrats are ignoring immigration at the southern border when Republicans are stonewalling efforts to deal with any sort of tangible legislation.
And if my predecessor is watching, instead of paying politics and pressuring members of Congress to block the bill, join me in telling the Congress to pass it. We can do it together, but that's what here's what he will not do. Mm-hmm. I will not demonize immigrants saying they are poison in the blood of our country.
Bingo.
I will not separate families. I will not ban people because of their faith. Unlike my predecessor on my first day in office, I introduced a comprehensive bill to fix our immigration system. Take a look at it. It has all these and more. Secure the border. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, yes, and so much more. But unlike my predecessor, I know who we are as Americans. We're the only nation in the world with a heart and soul that draws from old and new. Home to Native Americans, whose ancestors have been here for thousands of years. Home to people of from every place on earth. They came freely. Some came in chains. Mm-hmm. Some came when famine struck, like my ancestral family in Ireland. Mm-hmm. Some to flee persecution, to chase dreams that are impossible anywhere but here in America. That's America. And we all come from somewhere, but we're all American.
Yeah, but it's more okay if you're white and come from a European country, apparently.
Look, folks, we have a simple choice. We can fight about fixing the border, or we can fix it.
And in my mind, that's the distinction that he and Democrats have to make
the border bill now.
Yeah, throughout the rest of the election cycle, that Democrats are there to offer solutions, even solutions that some on the left, like me, aren't crazy about. So when we come back, we're going to cover the rest of the State of the Union. He dives into Roe v. Wade, women's reproductive choices. He takes ownership of the economy, and 3+ years in, I guess he should. He dives into the Affordable Care Act. Hello, Georgia legislature. Expand Medicaid now. And then, of course, he takes some swipes at himself. Spoiler alert, Joe Biden's old, and he actually knows that. I mean, which I think is half the battle. Anyway, We'll wander into that when the Ron Show returns in just a few here. Thank you for listening on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, or wherever you podcast. By the way, if you listen on demand on ProgressiveVoices.com or you listen via podcast, but you want to hear it first thing, the Ron Show is available to listen to weekdays, 9 to 10 a.m. on the America One Radio app or at AmericaOneRadio.com. The app is downloadable on the Google Play Market, the Apple Store as well. Again, it's America One Radio, and this show airs weekdays, 9 to 10 a.m. first, and then replays 5 to 6 p.m. If you just can't wait to get home and listen to it via podcast, you can listen to it when it rolls out first thing. Reviewing President Biden's State of the Union address from Thursday night. Let's see, he's covered a lot of the hard-hitting topics already. We discussed immigration, we discussed January 6th, the war in Ukraine, and now he wants to pivot to discuss reproductive rights, which will be a huge issue in 2024.
Like most Americans, I believe Roe v. Wade got it right. I thank Vice President Harris for being an incredible leader defending reproductive freedom and so much more. Thank you. My predecessor came to office determined to see Roe v. Wade overturned. He's the reason it was overturned, and he brags about it. Look at the chaos that has resulted. Joining us tonight is Kate Cox, the wife and mother from Dallas. She's become pregnant again and had a fetus of a fatal condition. Her doctor told Kate that her own life and her ability to have children in the future were at risk if she didn't act. Because Texas law banned her ability to act, Kate and her husband had to leave the state to get what she needed. What her family got through should have never happened as well, but it's happening in too many others. There are state laws banning the freedom to choose, criminalizing doctors, forcing survivors of rape and incest to leave their states to get the treatment they need. Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away? Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that.
That's another fantastic line from last night. He is calling women up to bat.
Clearly.
Take your swing at the ballot box. Gonna need you in 2024. That is a huge rallying cry.
Clearly. Those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women. But they found out when reproductive freedom was on the ballot. We won in 2022 and 2020, and we'll win again in 2024. If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again.
That's another one he's got to keep using on the campaign trail the next 241 days.
America's comeback is building the future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, investing in all America, in all Americans, to make sure everyone has a fair shot, and we leave no one behind. The pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. That's what America does. That's what America does. My inherited economy is on the brink. Now our economy is literally the envy of the world. 15 million new jobs in just 3 years, a record, a record. Unemployment at 50-year lows. A record 16 million Americans are starting small businesses, and each one is a literal act of hope. With historic job growth and small business growth for Black and Hispanics and Asian Americans, 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in America and counting. Where is it written we can't be the manufacturing capital of the world? We are, we will. More people have health insurance today. More people have health insurance today than ever before. The racial wealth gap is as small as it's been in 20 years. Wages keep going up. Inflation keeps coming down. Inflation has dropped from 9% to 3%, the lowest in the world, and tending lower. The landing is and will be soft. And now, instead of importing foreign products and exporting American jobs, we're exporting American products and creating American jobs right here in America, where they belong. And it takes time, but the American people are beginning to feel it.
Yes.
Consumer studies show consumer confidence is soaring.
Got to keep saying that.
Buy America has been the law of the land since the 1930s. Past administrations, including my predecessor, including some Democrats as well in the past, failed to buy American. Not anymore. On my watch, federal projects that you fund, like helping build American roads, bridges, and highways, will be made with American products and built by American workers.
Including Trump hats? Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Thank you so much for listening. We are still diving into last night's State of the Union address. Let's see what's left to cover. Oh, we're going to finish up on his points on health care, diving in specifically on women's health care and the shortcomings that this country has dealt with for a long time when it comes to funding women's health research. Let's see. And of course, he kind of points to the obvious. Yeah, he's old, but he uses that to his advantage and also takes a swipe at a similarly aged predecessor and future opponent. But he does still have some points to make about the economy, so let's let him wrap that part of the speech up.
And thanks to our CHIPS and Science Act, the United States is investing more in research and development than ever before. During the pandemic, a shortage of semiconductors, chips, that drove up the price of everything from cell phones to automobiles. And by the way, we invented those chips right here in America. Well, instead of having to import them, private companies are now investing billions of dollars to build new chip factories here in America, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Many of those jobs paying $100,000 a year and don't require a college degree. In fact, my policies have attracted $650 billion in private sector investment in clean energy, advanced manufacturing, creating tens of thousands of jobs here in America.
I appreciate that he took ownership of his economy and its accomplishments. That's going to be an important rallying cry the remainder of the 2024 election cycle. And don't think for a second that healthcare still isn't on Americans' radars. It's still on his. He believes the Affordable Care Act still a BFD.
Folks, the Affordable Care Act, the old Obamacare, is still a very big deal. Over 100 million of you can no longer be denied health insurance because of pre-existing condition. But my predecessor and many in this chamber want to take this prescription drug away by repealing the Affordable Care Act. I'm not going to let that happen. We stopped you 50 times before and we'll stop you again. In fact, I'm not only protecting it, I'm expanding it. They enacted tax credits of $800 per person per year, reduce health care costs for millions of working families. That tax credit expires next year. I want to make that savings permanent. To state the obvious, women are more than half our population, but research on women's health has always been underfunded. That's why we're launching the first ever White House initiative on women's health research, led by Jill, doing an incredible job as First Lady. So pass my plan for $12 billion to transfer women's health research and benefit millions of lives all across America.
Another opportunity for him to appeal to women voters. cannot be overlooked there. So I'm going to get to the closing part of his speech, and then we'll do a dovetail wrap-up here, some thoughts and some quick bullet points from some pundits around the country who watched as well. Spoiler alert, Joe Biden's old. He's aware.
Let me close with this. Yay. I know you don't want to hear any more, Lindsay, but I got to say a few more things. I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation. Between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future. My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy. A future based on core values that have defined America: honesty, decency, dignity, equality, to respect everyone, to give everyone a fair shot, to give hate no safe harbor. Now, other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution, that's not me. I was born amid World War II, when America stood for the freedom of the world. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, among working-class people who built this country. I watched in horror as two of my heroes, like many of you did, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, were assassinated. And their legacies inspired me to pursue a career in service. I left the law firm and became a public defender because my city of Wilmington was the only city in America occupied by the National Guard after Dr. King was assassinated because of the riots. And I became a county councilman almost by accident. I got elected to the United States Senate when I had no intention of running at age 29. Then vice president of our first black president. Now president to the first women vice president. In my career, I've been told I was too young. By the way, they didn't let me on the Senate elevators for votes sometimes. Not a joke. And I've been told I'm too old. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserves to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now. I'm optimistic. I really am. I'm optimistic, Nancy. My fellow Americans, the issue facing our nation isn't how old we are. It's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas that only take us back. You lead America, the land of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done. Tonight you've heard mine. I see a future where defending democracy, you don't diminish it. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, not take them away. I see a future where the middle class finally has a fair shot and the wealthy have to pay their fair share in taxes. I see a future where we save the planet from the climate crisis and our country from gun violence. Above all, I see a future for all Americans. I see a country for all Americans. And I will always be president for all Americans because I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people. You're the reason we've never been more optimistic about our future than I am now. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, you know what? Actually, this should have been earlier in the rundown here. He actually addressed Israel, Gaza, and hoping, I think, to appeal to those who are sympathetic to the plight of the Gazans. This announcement?
The United States has been leading international efforts to get more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. And Israel must do its part. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire.
Well, we'll see if that appeases those on the left who, again, have been outspoken in their opposition to Joe Biden's position on the Israel-Gaza crisis. I don't know that it will. So how did the American people receive it? Well, let's first go to CNN, who did a flash poll immediately in the aftermath of the speech.
62% said they're going to move in the right direction. 38% said they're going to move the country in the wrong direction. But keep an eye on that 62%, because we also asked how people felt that way prior to the speech. And if you compare here, before the speech started, these speech watchers, only 45% said Biden's policy would move the U.S. in the right direction. With watching the speech, that went up from 45% to 62%. Again,
so by my math, that's a 17% jump just from a speech. Actually, let me drill a little bit more into that post-speech poll. According to CNN, just over 6 in 10 Americans who tuned in expressed at least some confidence in Biden to protect American democracy, while 59% say they have at least some confidence in Biden's overall ability to carry out his duties as president. That is a huge jump from pre-speech. 36% of those who watched the speech said they have a lot of confidence in Biden to protect American democracy, 27% expressing some confidence, and 37% saying they have no real confidence in him. That is to be expected in a partisan society. Following the speech, according to CNN, 31% of those who watched said they have a lot of confidence in Biden's ability to carry out his duties as president. 28% have some confidence. That is a 59%. That's what we said earlier. 41% said they have no real confidence. Again, in a partisan environment, you have to expect somewhere in the 38 to 45% are going to give you some sort of nothing will ever satisfy me sort of answer. That's a slight uptick from a survey conducted in the days before the speech when 25% of those same people expressed a lot of confidence in his ability, 27% some confidence. So that's a 7% jump. Much of Biden's improvement on this score came among political independents. Boy, is that going to be huge in 2024. Who watched the speech. Before the speech, 51% of independents expressed at least some confidence in Biden's ability to carry out his duties, and that rose to 68% amongst the same group of independents after the speech. Perceptions of Biden's ability to carry out the duties of the presidency did not change significantly amongst either Democrats, as I said, partisans, or Republicans who tuned in. On substance, on policy, a 56% majority of Americans who watched the address said that Biden's economic policies will move the U.S. in the right direction. I mean, it has actually been the case for the last 3 years, so glad Americans are finally seeing it that way. 44% saying his policies will move things in the wrong direction. That's an improvement from the survey conducted prior to the speech. 55% of the same people said Biden's economic proposals would move things in the wrong direction, so that is a swing of 11%. About half, 53% of Americans who watched the address said that Biden's immigration policies will move the U.S. in the right direction. Again, that is a huge swing. Another 11% jump, up 42% in the pre-speech survey. About half the State of the Union viewers, 52%, said that Biden's proposed policies supporting abortion rights are about what they should be, according to the CNN poll of speech watchers conducted by SSRS. Another 29% said that his policies go too far, and 19% said they don't go far enough. So when you add the 52% that said that they're about right and 19% that want further, pushes to the left on reproductive policy. You're looking at what are we looking at? 71%. I'm sorry, I'm doing math on the fly. 71% who say his policies are on par or should be stronger in support of women's reproductive rights. Nearly half of the speech watchers, 53%, also said that the level of U.S. support Biden proposes offering to Israel is about right. 28% says he's proposing too much support, 20% not enough. And a similar 49% of those who tuned in said Biden's proposed levels of U.S. aid for Ukraine are about right. 34% saying Biden proposed levels of Ukraine support aid is too much. 16% saying it's not enough. Again, that is not a plurality, a majority who believe that the support is fine or want to see more. Again, another point to be made that Republicans are on the wrong side of every issue major to the U.S. voter at this point in time. Now that the speech is over, and again, we have 241 days until Election Day, it's hitting the campaign trail, and he's going to do that. In fact, he's going to be in Georgia tomorrow, Saturday. President will be in Atlanta for a Get Out the Vote event ahead of next Tuesday's presidential primary, according to the AJC Politics Politically Georgia blog. He won't have the state to himself, however. Former President Donald Trump is scheduled to be in Rome for a campaign rally Saturday at Marjorie Taylor Greene's district as well. Speaking of Marge, the crazy Red Hat Lady Society, she wearing her MAGA hat, which of course flew in the face of House decorum. She decided she wasn't going to adhere to decorum.
Here's what offended me. Here's what I found to be outrageous is Sergeant at Arms came up and told me that I needed to take the hat off. And I said, I'm not taking the hat off. I refused to take it off. And he said, well, it's decorum. I said, I certainly understand. You do what you need to do. I'll pay a fine. I'll do whatever, a warning, whatever there is. But I'm not taking the hat off. And he said, well, you're going to have to leave, or we're going to take you out. And I was like, you can haul me out of here. Go ahead and try it, but I'm not taking this hat off. And I told him, I'm elected by my district. This is the people's house. I will wear this hat. I will wear it here in the House floor because my district supports President Trump, supports Make America Great Again policies, and supports me wearing this hat. I'm not taking it off, and I'm not leaving.
So when she told the Sergeant at Arms, I understand that. Does she really understand decorum? Because again, she obviously couldn't adhere to dress code and couldn't keep from heckling a president while giving a speech. Okay, ma'am. Thanks for the precedent. One more segment. Got a little cleanup to do. We will discuss the Republican response when we get back and some headlines that'll get us through the weekend. Thanks for listening to The Ron Show on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, or wherever you podcast. Follow The Ron Show at Ron Show ATL on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, at Ron Show ATL. Back in just a second. All right, so we're in the home stretch and looking forward to the weekend. Thank you for listening. If you are doing so for the first time on Progressive Voices Network, by the way, really excited to be joining that network. You can hear this show 5 days a week on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com. That app, by the way, downloadable on the Apple Store. Used to be called iTunes. I think it's called the Apple Store now. And the Google Play Market as well. We air 9 to 10 a.m. weekdays first, and then replay 5 to 6 p.m. And then via podcast, if that's how you listen, you can do that wherever you podcast, whatever platform. Just like and subscribe, or both, or either, to The Ron Show. Oh, all right. So Senator Katie Britt from Alabama, of all states, we found a youngish mom at her kitchen table giving us a response speech. The kitchen table. Yeah, that's so American, to blow. So Norman Rockwell, right? She spoke, in fact, I'm going to let Rachel Maddow, who made some points after this speech, point out a few of the things that I found pretty interesting as well.
Just as a matter of context here, I think Alabama has been on everybody's mind in terms of the debate around reproductive rights, in particular because of the Alabama Supreme Court and their recent ruling on IVF. Senator Britt ran as a strongly anti-abortion rights candidate. So that does sort of implicitly spotlight that issue. Obviously, the most, I would say, the portion of her response that took up the most word count, at least, was her talk on the border. And just to contextualize that, she was one of the U.S. senators who was involved in the bipartisan negotiations to create a border bill. And she helped create the bill and then voted against it when Donald Trump called on Republicans to pull the plug on the bill that they themselves had negotiated.
And Katie spent a long time, and I have to wonder if in her scholastic days, if she had any theater experience, because it was a very dramatic speech. She had some trembling of the voice and sounded like she was going to break into tears at some point in time, but never did. And I'm not trying to dismiss her. I'm not saying that she doesn't have heartfelt emotions about these sort of things, but she's also in a position of power where she had the opportunity to effect the needed change, or the change that she believes is needed. And when given the opportunity to, first of all, worked to craft the legislation, and then on cue, because guy in red hat who used to be president said, stop doing it, she stopped doing it.
We all recall when presidents faced national security threats with strength and resolve. That seems like ancient history. Right now, our commander-in-chief is not in command. The free world deserves better than a dithering and diminished leader. America deserves leaders who recognize that secure borders, stable prices, safe streets, and a strong defense are actually the cornerstones of a great nation. Just ask yourself, are you better off now than you were 3 years ago? There's no doubt we're at a crossroads, and it doesn't have to be this way. We all feel it. But here's the good news.
Sorry.
We, the people, are still in the driver's seat. We get to decide whether our future will grow brighter or whether we'll settle for an America in decline. Well, I know which choice our children deserve, and I know the choice the Republican Party is fighting for. We are the party of hard-working parents and families, and we want to give you and your children the opportunities to thrive. And we want families to grow. It's why we strongly support continued nationwide access to in vitro fertilization.
Sure, now.
We want to help loving moms and dads bring precious life into this world.
Unless maybe it's IVF for a gay couple. I don't know. Maybe I can get her on the record on that at some point in time. You notice she asked if you were better off 3 years ago instead of 4 last election cycle. 4 years ago, of course, we were storing bodies in trucks behind emergency rooms at hospitals to keep them cold enough while waiting on the backlog to diminish at funeral homes. And I'm sure she had to fix that 4 year to 3 year after Representative Elise Stefanik actually asked that via social media earlier this week and was roundly chastised for really screwing the pooch on that one. Real quick, one of Governor Brian Kemp's crown jewels achievements economically, the Rivian plant, the electric vehicle upstart, according to Zachary Hansen at the AJC, that announced more than 2 years ago it plans to build a $5 billion vehicle and battery plant with 7,500 promised jobs east of Atlanta. They're halting the project. The California company, which promised in late 2021 to build what was then considered Georgia's largest ever economic development project, said Thursday in an event introducing new models that it will now start production of its anticipated R2 crossover at its sole factory in Illinois instead of the Peach State. Wah, wah. Never say never. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, by the way, chastising Rivian for doing so, and now pivots to saying, hey, we've got a prep site for somebody else who wants to move in on it. Yeah. All right, listen, enjoy your weekend. Back Monday, 9 to 10 a.m. on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, and then listen wherever you podcast, if you'd like. All the show notes, we've got them, RonShowATL.com. Have a great weekend.